Hi all, this is the selections from Beowulf, translated from the Old English by Seamus Heaney. You notice that when there's square brackets like these, it means that I added something to the text. The line in italics were added by other editors as titles for sections. And when you see an ellipsis, that is the three dots, that signals that I deleted lines to make the text shorter. So the first part of Beowulf is about Beowulf, Grendel, and Grendel's mother. So the spear Danes in days gone by, and the kings who ruled them had courage and greatness. We have heard of those princes' heroic campaigns, setting up that we are in Denmark, and particularly in Herat. This section is called Herat is Threatened. Then a powerful demon, a prowler through the dark, nursed a hard grievance. He was angry. It harrowed him to hear the din, the noise of the loud banquet. Every day in the hall, the harp being struck, he hates hearing music, and the clear song of a skilled poet, telling with the mastery of man's beginnings how the Almighty had made the earth, the gleaming plain gilded in his splendor. He set the sun and the moon, right? This is about the creation of the world, to be earth lamplights, lanterns for men, and fill the broad lap of the world with branches and leaves, and questioned life in every other thing that moved. Grendel, a monster descended from Cain's clan, like in the Bible, Cain, begins to prowl. So times were pleasant for the people there, until finally one, a fiend out of hell, began to work his evil in the world. Grendel was the name of this grim demon, haunting the marches, marauding round the heath and the desolate fens, right? He's coming from the world around the hall, into the hall. He had dwelt for a time in misery among the banished monsters, Cain's clan, whom the Creator had outlawed and condemned as outcasts. If you know the book of Genesis, Bereshit, then you know the story of Cain and Abel. Then, as dawn brightened and the day broke, Grendel's powers of destruction were plain. The wassail was over. They wept to heaven and mourned under mourning. Right? He killed many of the Danes, so now we have a scene of mourning. Their mighty prince, the storied leader, the famous leader, sat stricken and helpless, humiliated by the loss of his guard, bewildered, confused, and stunned, staring aghast, afraid, in horror at the demon's trail, to what he left behind, in deep distress. The Danes, hard pressed, turned for help to heathen gods, right? To pagan gods, to gods who are not the one Christian God. Sometimes at pagan shrines they vowed, offering to idols, right, like statues of gods, swore oaths that the killer of souls might come to their aid and save the people. So the killer of souls is the other gods, maybe the devil, and they are asking the wrong deity, the wrong force for help. That was their way, their heathenish hope deep in their hearts. They remembered hell, the almighty judge of good deeds and bad, the Lord God, head of heavens and high king of the world, was unknown to them. right? This is before they became Christians. Oh, cursed is he who in time of trouble has to thrust his soul in the fire's embrace, forfeiting help. You're not getting the real help from God in this perspective, but you have to ask for hell's help. There's nowhere to turn, but blessed is he who after death can approach the Lord and find friendship in the Father's embrace, right? The Father, another name for God. So Beowulf of the Geats, or Geats, which is in southern Sweden, he hears about these troubles, and Beowulf and his men, he decides to go out to Denmark to help. Beowulf and his men meet the coast guard and are taken to Herat, that's the hall of the king Hrothgar, where they have the trouble with Beowulf. There they are welcomed. Beowulf declares he will fight Grendel. And so, my request, O King of bright Danes, right? This is Beowulf speechifying, making a speech. And so, my request, O King of bright Danes, dear Prince of the Scyldings, that's another name for the Danes, friend of the people and the ring of defense, my one request is that you won't refuse me, who have come to this far, the privilege of purifying Herat. Right, I request that you let me help you, with my own men to help me, and nobody else. I have heard, moreover, that the monster scorns in his reckless, his fearless way to use weapons. Grendel doesn't use weapons. Therefore, the highest Higlac's fame, and gladden his heart, I hereby renounce sword and the shelter of a broad shield. Beowulf is saying Grendel doesn't use weapons, so I won't use weapons. The heavy war board, hand to hand, is how it will be, a life and death fight with the fiend. Whichever one death fells must deem it a just judgment by God. So God will decide who will win. If Grendel wins, it will be a gruesome day. He will glut himself on the Geats in the war hall, swoop without fear on the flower of manhood, as on others before. Then my face won't be there to be covered in death. He will carry me away as he goes to ground, gorged and bloodied. It will be a mess if he wins. He will run gloating with my rock corpse and feed on it alone, in a cruel frenzy, fouling his moor nest. Will take me to He will take me to the swamp and celebrate his victory. No need then to lament for long or lay out my body. If the battle takes me, send back this beast webbing that Wieland fashioned and Herthel gave me to Lord Haglich. Fate goes ever as fate must. They feast, they have a big dinner, they tell stories about how strong Beowulf is, and then the Danes leave Beowulf and his men and who remain in the hall to fight. Again, Beowulf renounces the use of weapons. He says he won't use weapons. So it won't be a cutting edge I'll wield, cutting edge a sword, to mow him down, to take him down, easily as I might. He has no idea of the arts of war, or shield or sword play, although he does possess a wild strength. No weapons, therefore, for either this night. Unarmed he shall face me, if face me he dares. He's going to face me if he has enough bravery to face me. he's going to find me unarmed, without weapons. And may the divine Lord in his wisdom grant the glory of victory to whichever side he sees fit. Grendel attacks. Grendel strikes. In off the moors, from the swamps, down through the mist bands, God-cursed Grendel came greedily loping. The bane of the race of men roamed forth, hunting for a prey in the high hall. Under the cloud murk he moved towards it, until it shone above him, a sheer keep of fortified gold. Nor was that the first time he had scouted the ground of Hrothgar's dwelling, although never in his life, before or since, did he find harder fortune or hold defenders. So this is the first time he has such a difficult battle when he goes into the hall of the Danes. Spurned and joyless, he journeyed on ahead and arrived at the barn. The iron braced door turned on its hinges when his hands touched it. Then his rage boiled over. He ripped open the mouth of the building, right? The door is the mouth of the building, and he rips it open, maddening for blood. He's crazy for blood, pacing the length of the patterned floor with his loathsome tread, disgusting tread, while a baleful light, flame from then light, flared from his eyes. His eyes are burning. He saw many men in the mansion, sleeping, a rank company of kinsmen and warriors, quartered together, and his glee was demonic, picturing the mayhem the trouble is going to cause. Before morning he would rip life from limb and devour them, feed on their flesh. But his fate that night was due to change. His days of ravening had come to an end. So he's expecting to eat the gits, but he's not going to be lucky tonight. A git warrior perishes. Mighty and canny, Heglic's Skinsman was keenly watching for the first move the monster would make. So Heglic's Skinsman is another name for Beowulf, the relative of the king Heglic. Nor did the creature keep him waiting, but struck suddenly and started in. He grabbed and mauled a man on his bench. Mauled is a word like biting somebody. It's a word you use for dogs. Bit into his bone lappings, bolted down his blood, and gorged on him in lumps. Basically ate the person, leaving the body utterly lifeless, eaten up hand and foot. Venturing closer, going closer, his talon was raised to attack Beowulf, where he lay on the bed. He was bearing in with open claw when the alert hero's comeback and arm lock forestalled him utterly. Beowulf stops him with grabbing his arm in a lock. Beowulf's fight with Grendel. The captain of evil discovered himself in the hand grip harder than anything he had ever encountered in any man on the face of the earth. So Grendel found himself in a situation he never experienced, of being locked and wrestling with a stronger man, the strongest man he ever encountered. Every bone in his body quailed and recoiled, but he could not escape. He was desperate to flee to his den and hide with the devil's litter, for in all his days he had never been clamped or cornered like this. And now the timbers trembled and sang. The wood, the wood that makes up the hall is trembling. A whole session that harrowed every Dane inside the stockade, stumbling in fury. The two contenders, Beowulf and Grendel, crashed through the building. You can really imagine this as an action movie. Then an extraordinary wail arose. Bewildering fear came over the Danes. Everyone felt it, like a bewildering, a scary, unearthly, something you never heard like it scream that came, and fear takes over the Danes. Everyone felt it, who heard the cry as it echoed off the wall, a god-cursed scream and strain of catastrophe, the howl of the loser, the lament of the hell serf, keening his wound, complaining about the wound. Grendel is crying out in pain, in losing. He was overwhelmed, mantled, tied by the man who had all men, was foremost and strongest in the days of this life, was tied down by Beowulf, the strongest of men, this hero. Grendel is defeated. Beowulf fulfills his boast. Then he who had harrowed the hearts of men, who scared everybody, Grendel, with pain and affliction, with suffering in former times, and had given offense also to God, found that his bodily powers failed him, is not strong enough. Heglic's kinsman, Beowulf, kept him helplessly locked in a hand grip. As long as either lived, he was hateful to the other. The monster's whole body was in pain. A tremendous wound appeared on his shoulder. Sinews split and the bone lapping burst. Beowulf was granted the glory of winning. Grendel was driven under the fan banks, fatally hurt, to his desolate lair. So Beowulf has his arm, and Grendel runs away back to the swamp where he came from. So the Danes and Beowulf's men celebrate the victory. Hrothgar's minstrel sings about Beowulf. So the entertainer, the poet, is singing about Beowulf. At times the warband broke into a gallop, letting their chestnut horses race wherever they found the going good on those well-known tracks. Meanwhile, a thane, a nobleman of the king's household, a carrier of tales, a storyteller, a traditional singer deeply schooled in the lore of the past, linked a new theme, a new idea, a new story to a strict meter, to an old way of writing poems. The man started to recite with skill, rehearsing retelling Beowulf's triumphs and feats in big fashioned lines, or in well fashioned lines, entwining his words. The tale of Sigemund, the dragon slayer, appropriate for Beowulf who has defeated Grendel. He told what he'd heard, repeating in songs about Sigemund's exploits, all those many feats and marvels, the struggles and wanderings of Will's son, things unknown to anyone except to Fitela, feuds and foul doings confided by uncle to nephew when he felt the urge to speak of them. Always they had been partners in the fight, friends in need. They killed giants, their conquering swords had brought them down. They celebrate Beowulf, tells of the fight, great treasures are given to Beowulf and his men. Only the roof remained unscathed from the hall by the time the guilt-foul fiend turned tail to despair of his life. But death is not easily escaped from by anyone. All of us with souls, earth dwellers, and children of men, must make our way to the destination, to a destination already ordained, that is, a destination we know from advance, that was set for us in advance, where the body, after banqueting, sleeps on its deathbed. So life is banqueting and the body sleeps in death. All of us are going to die. Even while they're celebrating, they are reminded of this. They go to sleep after the feast, but another threat is lurking in the night. They went to sleep, and one paid dearly for his night's ease, and had happened to them often, ever since Grendel occupied the Gold Hall, committing evil until the end came, death after his crimes. Then it became clear, obvious to everyone once the fight was over, that an avenger, somebody wanting revenge, lurked, waited, and was still alive, grimly biding time, waiting for the right time. Grendel's mother, a monstrous hale bride, brooded on her wrongs. She had been forced down into fearful waters, the cold depths, after Cain had killed his father's son, felled his own brother with a sword, branded an outlaw, marked by having murdered. He moved into the wilds. This is still about Cain. Shunned company and joy, and from Cain there sprang misbegotten, like misshaped, badly monstrous spirits, among them Grendel, the banished and accursed, due to come to grips with the Watcher in Herat, waiting to do battle. The monster wrenched and wrestled with him, but Beowulf was mindful of his mighty strength, the wondrous gifts God showered on him. He relied for help on the Lord of all, on his care and favor. So he overcame the foe, brought down the hell brute, brought down Grendel, broken and bowed, outcast from all sweetness, the enemy of mankind made for his death then. Okay, he chased away Grendel. But now his mother, Grendel's mother, had went forth on a savage journey, grief, grief-racked and ravenous, hungry and wanting revenge, desperate for revenge. Grendel's mother attacks. She came to Herat, to the hall. There, inside the hall, Danes lay asleep early, right? The same place where they eat and celebrate, they also go to sleep. Danes lay asleep, earls who would soon endure a great reversal, once Grendel's mother attacked and entered. Her onslaught was less only by as much as an Amazon warrior's strength is less than an armed man's when the hafted sword, its hammered edge and gleaming blade bathed in blood. So she's only a little bit less strong than Grendel. Beowulf is cold, and Danes and Geats go chasing after Grendel's mother. So she attacks, kills some Danes, and runs away, and they go chase after her. They don't wait for her to come back. Beowulf bolsters Hogarth's courage, the king's courage. He proclaims the heroic code that guides their lives. Beowulf, son of Ecgtheow, spoke. Wise sir, do not grieve. It is always better to avenge dear ones than to indulge in mourning. So we're not going to be sad, we're going to get revenge. For every one of us, living in this world means waiting for our end. We're all going to die anyway. So other things than life are more important, like honor and avenging the people you are responsible for. Let whoever can win glory before death, right? Honor, glory. When a warrior is gone, that will be his best and only bulwark. So arise, my lord, and let us immediately set forth on the trail of this troll dam. I guarantee you she will not get away, not to dens underground, nor on upland groves, nor the ocean floor. We're going to get her. She'll have nowhere to flee to. Endure your troubles today. Bear up and be the man I expect you to be. Beowulf goes underwater to fight Grendel's mother. After these words, the prince of the weather Geats, another name for the Geats, another word for Beowulf, the prince of the Geats, was impatient to be away and plunged suddenly, plunged into the water. Without more ado, without talking any more, he dived into the heaving depths of the lake. It was the best part of the day before he could see the solid bottom. Grendel's mother captured Beowulf, his sword. Grendel's mother captures Beowulf, and his sword can't hurt her. She's invincible to his sword. He fights back with his bare hands. The keen inlaid warm loop pattern steel was hurled to the ground. He would have to rely on the might of his arm. He doesn't have a sword. So must a man do who intends to gain enduring glory in a combat. Life doesn't cost him a thought. He doesn't worry about his own life. He just fights. Then the prince of the war gates, Beowulf, warming to this fight with Grendel's mother, gripped her shoulder and laid about him a battle frenzy. He's He's unstoppable. He's like crazy for battle. He pitched his killer opponent to the floor, but she rose quickly and retaliated, grappled him tightly in her grim embrace, and she catches him. The sure-footed fighter felt daunted. He was afraid. The strongest, he might be beaten. The strongest of warriors stumbled and fell. So she pounced upon him, she jumped upon him, and pulled out a broad whetted knife. Now she would avenge her only child. Right, Beowulf killed Grendel, so Grendel's mother is going to kill Beowulf. But the mesh of chainmail on Beowulf's shoulder shielded his life. His armor shielded his life. Turn the edge protected his life. Turn the edge and tip of the blade. The son of Ecto, Beowulf, would have surely perished, and the gates lost the warrior under the wide earth, as the strong links and locks of the war gear of the armor not helped to save him. Holy God decided the victory. It was easy for the Lord, the ruler of heaven, to redress the balance once Beowulf got back up on his feet. So he was almost a goner, but now he's back on his feet. Beowulf discovers a mighty sword and slays his opponent. Then he saw a blade, a sword that boded well, that promised something good. A sword in her armory, an ancient heirloom from the days of the giants, from ancient times, an ideal weapon, one that any warrior would envy, but so huge and heavy of itself, only Beowulf could wield it in battle. It's so heavy, only somebody as strong as Beowulf could actually use it. So the Shielding's hero again, Beowulf, hard pressed and enraged, took a firm hold of the hilt and swung the blade in an arc. a resolute blow that beat deep into her neck bone and severed it entirely. So he's taking off her head, toppling the doomed house of her flesh. She fell to the floor. The sword dripped blood. The swordsman was elated. The sword the sword blade melts. Meanwhile, the sword began to wilt into gory icicles. Her blood is so poisonous that even this wonderful sword is destroyed by killing her. Meanwhile, the sword began to wilt into gory icicles, to slather and thaw. It was a wonderful thing, the way it all melted as ice melts. The metal melts just as easily as ice when the Father eases the fetters of the frost and unravels the water ropes. He who wields power over time and tide. He is the true Lord. Again, a reference to God. So Beowulf returns, they feast, but also discuss the fragility of life again. The Geats prepare to leave. Hrothgar, the king of the Danes, declares that Beowulf is fit to be king of the Geats. Hrothgar spoke and answered him, "The Lord in his wisdom sent you those words, and they came from the heart. I have never heard so young a man make truer observation. You are strong in body and mature in mind, impressive in speech. If it should come to pass that Hrethell's descendant, that is the king of the Geats, dies beneath a spear, if that deadly battle or the sword blade or disease fells the prince who guards your people, and you are still alive, then I firmly believe the seafaring Geats won't find a man worthier of acclaim as their king and defender than you. You should be their king if their king ever dies. If only you would undertake the lordship of your homeland. My liking for you deepens with time, dear Beowulf. What you have done is to draw two peoples, the Geats nation and us neighboring Danes, into shared peace and pact of friendship, in spite of hatreds we have harbored in the past. So even though we had some war in the past, the way you helped me created peace. For as long as I rule this far-flung land, treasures will change hands and each side will treat the other with gifts. Across the gannet's bath, over the broad sea, hurled prows will bring presents and tokens. We'll have a good relationship represented by gifts. I know your people are beyond reproach in every respect, steadfast in the old way with friend and foe. So you are also loyal. So after this adventure, this rescue mission, Beowulf returns home and tells of his voyage, and is rewarded by the king with lands and honor. Everybody loves him, and eventually is going to become the king of the Geats. But that's another story. So I hope this reading was useful for you. You enjoyed it, and see you in class.